Good morning out there. Today is Wednesday, January 14th, 2026. I'm Anthony, and this is DriveDive. So this is a story, I think, a little bit about spirituality, but also about just parenting and Disney Lorcana, in the context of Disney Lorcana, if you're familiar with the trading card game. And so I had the pleasure, the opportunity, privilege to bring my family to Richmond, Virginia this past weekend for my son and I to participate in the Disney Lorcana Challenge, finally known as a DLC event there. And I mean, I don't play a terribly competitive deck. I should, but anyway, the story's not about me. It's about my son, who is 9, and he's a heck of a Lorcana player. And he, I mean, to his credit, right? Like maybe I won one DLC, but it was largely with his help. You know, winning his matches, and playing down, my maybe tougher matchups. And so in the end, I just kind of, lucked into it a little bit, that the top 4, where I ended up winning the championship, and he came in, I want to say, like 3rd place, but we're hoping to get him his set championship win. But it's not about set championships, it's about DLCs, where he's playing with and against, some of the top players like in the world. And so he's played at a high level where, we even went to the Milwaukee one back in October, where he went 8-4. He made day 2, which is a huge accomplishment. You get a participation card. You get 3 wins on day 1 out of 8 rounds, 3 wins, and you can qualify for the next promo card. You get 3 more wins on top of that for a total of 6, and then you get to play day 2, where you play 4 more rounds, out of so then 12 total, and then you go into a top cut. Top 64 get an additional promo, right? So if you go 9 wins, basically 9 and 3, you would get this additional promo, and then essentially 10 and 2 is what would get you into the top 32, where now it's like a 32 player bracket, where you'd play 5 rounds ultimately to decide the winner of the tournament. So he hasn't quite made those top 2 tiers, I guess I would say, just yet. That 32 final cut or the 64 with the additional promo card, but he has made day 2, and he's gone 8-4. He did that in Milwaukee at the end of October, playing Amber Steel, one type of deck, a different certain play style, and against, right, what you'd call a different meta, right? The field playing certain types of decks. And so he did it in Milwaukee, and then he just did it this past weekend in Richmond, where once again he went 8-4. A different day 2, where he started off really strong, winning his first 2 rounds, and then he lost his 3rd and 4th, his final 2 rounds. So it was tough, but it's such a long event, for kids, for anybody. It's a really long event for anybody, where even the final matchup was kind of decided by a silly misplay, that allowed the one person to win rather than the other. And so, my son, playing in his last 2 rounds, also had some sort of, questionable decisions that may or may not have cost him, those matchups and things like that. But he's 9, right? And so, show him some grace, I'll show him some grace, and he has to learn to do the same, and it's all learning opportunities. But anyway, like that's, I guess the parenting side, and I'll share some more details. But I had this little, spiritual moment where, he's going into his 11th round, and I was just like, I had a moment where I was just pondering my own existence, and being there and watching him play, and how fun it is, and but also struggling with other aspects of just life. And I'm always reminded of that moment in church, and forgive me for not knowing the specifics, but whether it's the Lord's Prayer or whatever it is, where they say something to the effect of help me to know what he wants, to do what he wants, and to want what he wants. I think it's phrased as you, right? Help me to know what you want, do what you want, and want what you want. And I really struggle with that. Probably that last part, of what about, because I go what about what I want, and so it's I had that moment where I just, I'm right where I need to be. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be playing, a highly competitive deck, and I'm not supposed to be in the running for these top 64 and top 32, cuts. It's my son, right? And I'm supposed to be supporting him and all of that. So I had that just interesting moment for me. You know, I of course was wishing and hoping and praying essentially that you know, my son would go on to win his next 2 rounds and make that top 32 cut and continue playing, you know, with like the best of the best that day. It didn't happen, right? But, you know, lots of major, you know, takeaways and good connections and, you know, things like that from throughout the weekend and the experience. And, you know, just once again, you know, proving that he's a heck of a player. So, right, because Milwaukee did it in with one deck, one play style, you know, against other types of decks, right? And now with a completely different, you know, blue-green deck, more of a control aspect to it, and lots of decisions that you have to make within. So, you know, much more difficult deck, I think, to pilot, as they say, than perhaps Amber Steel was. And, you know, for him to do just as well, you know, in the 2 different, very different tournaments, it's just really speaks volumes to, you know, his skill as a player and just overall intelligence, right? And so one of those connections that we made was with a gentleman who goes by the name of Fungus, who actually won the DLC this past weekend. You know, I managed through some channels and things like that to get in touch with him prior and set my son up with a coaching session with Fungus. You know, who now is circling back, and I sincerely appreciate it. Didn't expect or think, you know, but circling back to, you know, really connect with us and hear more of our story and share that out through, you know, his social media channels and such. So, you know, really grateful for that upcoming opportunity, you know, and then I'm able to just do all of this with my son, you know, and get his story, get our story out there, you know, as we've gone down this rabbit hole or ventured into this world of Lorcana and, you know, social media, right, putting videos out there on YouTube and TikTok and selling cards online and just doing a lot of stuff with it, with this hobby of ours, you know, where we've kind of made a business of it. It's a lot of fun, and to be able to do all of that together with him is amazing. I'm grateful that my wife and daughter were able to make this trip too. So, you know, because they hadn't in the past. We went to the Atlanta, the very first Disney Lorcana Challenge event a couple years back, and then, like I said, we were able to make it to Milwaukee was the second, Richmond the third, and now we're hoping to go to Indianapolis at the end of June, where again it'll just be a completely different meta. People playing different decks with different styles, and we'll see what my son Kid Kana ends up you know, playing with at that point, and with Fungus and his guidance and how all of that will play out, because he's right on the cusp. You know, he's ready to take that next step. And so, yeah, but I appreciate you listening and letting me share that bit. That's pretty much everything for me. I don't imagine this will get too many views, but I hope that folks will check out, you know, whether you know, my son's channel, Kid Kana, channel that he and I managed together, or, you know, if they're familiar with Fungus, who is a bit more of an established player, and certainly, you know, now with the DLC win under his belt, you know, should get the you know, the recognition he deserves, and through those channels, him graciously, you know, asking to share our story, you know, on his YouTube channel, you know, hopefully garners Kid Kana, my son, you know, some of that recognition that he deserves as well. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you'll like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Comment down below. Spirituality, parenthood, family life, children's interests, all that fun stuff. And otherwise, just have a great day. Thanks again. Take care.